Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney in Massachusetts.
And I'm Camille Barron, a financial coordinator, also here in Massachusetts. And today we have a guest who's returning, I think, for the third time.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about...
They love her.
Yes.
Because her name's LoDolce, which means the sweet.
Yes,
she
is sweet.
And her middle name is?
Camille.
Which is sweet. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
And so a lot of people have asked us to talk about changes that they go through in their lives, whether it be financial or in their marriages, or life events, we call them, and what are the implications of those? So we thought that we would have a topic today that talks a little bit more about those things.
Yes, and we're very fortunate to have Ann LoDolce back, and with her today, too, is attorney Norman Novinsky, who's going to talk about bankruptcy. And you know, when you're in divorce, somebody thinks that they're going to end up in bankruptcy, but let's greet. Thank you for coming
Welcome back, Ann.
Thank you.
And welcome, Norm.
Thank you. So tell us, what do you do?
Well, I am a divorce mediator at this point. I don't do litigation. I'm just doing mediation. And mediation is a process where you sit down with both parties, the husband and the wife, or the two significant others, whatever the case might be, and you get them to a point of agreement. And it saves them money. It brings the matter to conclusion with civility. And it's just a better private process. And you're trying, and as a mediator, I try and keep the people on a very positive plane and try and preserve their relationship, because many times, particularly if there are children involved, that they will be seeing each other for many years to come.
Now, mediator is different than a conciliator. Or can they sometimes be used
conciliator is appointed by the court, and that is a process where you help the people to settle their case. I am also a conciliator, but you give them specific directives. In mediation, you encourage people to find out what the plateaus are that they want to arrive at within the confines of the law. So a conciliator is more directed than a mediator.
Okay. And Norm, how does that relate, what you do? Tell us what you do. How does that relate to divorce?
Well, I'm a bankruptcy specialist. I've been a bankruptcy specialist now for 42 years. I started out actually teaching as an adjunct professor at New England School of Law. And from that, the practice sprung open. I gained my reputation as concentrating just in bankruptcy. So a lot of people who go through divorce have financial problems. And one interesting thing we can do, many times there's property that has liens on them and other encumbrances, and I can create equity for these people that they can split in a divorce. So sometimes it's very beneficial for a divorced couple to file bankruptcy to eliminate the debt so they can afford better child support, they can afford better alimony, and also create some equity sometimes, depending on the circumstances.
What about their credit?
Well, credit is something that has changed over the years. It used to be, once you filed bankruptcy, it was very difficult. Today, it's much different. Most people can rebuild their credit within a couple years, and there's companies out there that can assist you in rebuilding credit. If you want to get a car loan, believe it or not, as soon as you get your discharge in bankruptcy, you can get a car loan. The FHA will insure your house loan after 2 years, and after a Chapter 7. So it's completely different than what it used to be. It's not the Puritan ethic anymore. So many people have had to file bankruptcy with all the foreclosures, with all the real estate crises, large companies, small companies. So it's looked upon a lot different than what it used to be.
How do you know what is right? Like, what is right for one party may not be right for the other?
Sure.
Do you then collaborate?
We do. We do. Many times that's what makes it easier for the client, so they don't have to get different opinions from many different places. We can just simply have different consultations, and then we'll collaborate with each other and see what we can do for the people. Absolutely. It's a big help.
In mediation, what I do if I hear a bankruptcy issue, I mean, I am a specialist in divorce, but I can recognize a bankruptcy issue, and in that instance, I then recommend that they speak with a bankruptcy attorney, and I might send them to Norman, who can then meet with them in a separate, because it's a totally separate process, but they're interlinked, so to speak, because both a divorce or even a paternity case, that kind of thing, is a transition for people. And bankruptcy is a transition too. Many times when you're going through one transition, you need to address other transitions, transition points. And it's like a domino effect. It's like the waves of a shore, you know? One wave comes and another. So you have to really deal with each situation.
But there are also different courts. You're in the probate court, and you're in the still a federal court,
It's a
isn't
federal
it?
court in Boston mostly, yes. It's a federal court system, which most people don't realize that it is regulated by the federal court. The bankruptcy court is overseen by the Department of Justice, actually, and the division
Really?
called the U.S. Trustee's Office is a division of the Department of Justice.
Now, what are some things that might come up with divorce that aren't dischargeable in bankruptcy?
Well,
you know, say, oh, I
the
owe
obvious
this, I'm
ones-
going to bankruptcy.
Yeah,
And
the
how often can you still, used to be what, you couldn't go into bankruptcy for a certain number of years?
Well, let me back up a
Yeah.
little bit, because there's different types of bankruptcies, and the number of years is dependent upon the type. So you got Chapter 7, which is just what we call straight bankruptcy, and that's once every 8 years.
Once every 8 years.
yeah.
Let me see.
And some people do. I do have repeat customers. I do.
You do?
They call up and say, in 1982, you did my bankruptcy. You still doing it? You want to come back? And they, sure, come on in.
Are they upset that you don't have their file, or are they amazed that you do have the
They're
file?
upset when I don't recognize them. That's mostly it. Then there's Chapter 13s, which you can do really every 4 years. So, you know, you can do a Chapter 13.
Chapter 13.
That's a
working.
reorganization. That's a
Oh,
reorganization.
Chapter 13 is reorganization? Isn't
Yeah.
that the working? Oh,
It
oh,
used to be
that-
called the Wage Earners
oh.
Plan.
Oh, yeah, it's
many
not
years
called
ago.
that anymore?
No, not anymore.
What
Not
is it
anymore.
called?
Chapter 13.
Oh, reorganization?
It's a reorganization. Then there's Chapter 11.
That's a
For
company.
company or individuals whose secured debts exceed $1 million.
Oh.
So you can have individuals that
Really?
own multiple properties, and their mortgages are over $1 million, so they're not eligible for Chapter 13. They have to go into the 11.
Oh, that
Oh,
explains it.
I
So-
thought
so
Chapter
the answer, it
11
all
was
depends.
just,
Yeah.
just corporation. Is there one just for corporations?
That would be Chapter 11, or Chapter
Okay.
7 if they go out of business
Oh,
completely.
they can do both.
So people must be, you know, not in their best mode when you see them, because they're going through major changes that are unfortunate changes. And
Yeah.
but I bet that by having you there as their counsel, it probably helps them to get through it the best way possible.
Well, both of us do solution-oriented work. I mean, it's not like you're in therapy with people and you're just going year after year dealing with issues and sort of rehashing things. The goal of the processes that I engage in have an end point, which is to have a
good.
disillusionment or a settlement or just an end point and finality. And the same thing with Norman.
You had a great expression. I hate to interrupt you, but you had a great expression. You're there to reconcile, not rehash.
That's true. That's true.
That is great.
You want to get to the end point, and people feel very relieved. People come into the office and they look terrible, they feel terrible, and then by the end of the process, assuming that this is something that you can also get them a little bit of help with psychologically, they can feel relieved of some of that emotional baggage.
How do you tell when they're ready for Norman or a bankruptcy lawyer? They just can't agree? Is it because they can't agree because they got so much
if they
debt?
have a bankruptcy situation, you just recognize, for example, if someone has a home that is underwater, meaning that the mortgage balance exceeds the fair market value of the house, then that might be something that I would say, you know, you might want to get an opinion on it. Or let's say people come in, they might have $50,000 in credit card debt, and they're earning, and they might have lost their job, and they maybe only make $20,000 a year. I mean, that's something that someone like Norman can assist them with. There are many everyday situations that an attorney that is not a bankruptcy attorney would recognize as the telltale problem, and we call it red flagging. And then what you have to do is you get them to the appropriate source. I mean, the practice of law is like the practice of medicine is to dentistry. I mean, it's very, very niche-oriented. So he does what he does, and he does it very well, and I do what I do as well. So you have to just sort of push people into the right direction.
It's really giving people a fresh start. That's the term that we use. You know, people come in with $50,000, $100,000, even $200,000 of credit cards, and they have nowhere to go. And so you can really get that burden off of them. And, you know, they're not sleeping, they're not
Well,
eating.
how do you get them into bankruptcy? Oh, I got two questions.
All right.
First is, do you ever have people who say, gee, I'm going to go home and charge up some more, you know? And so is there a time limit, like they can't file in April, they can't like go out April 1st and
Right.
charge up a storm and then go in? And then to follow with the next question, which I'm starting to forget, the next question is, how do you reconcile that with, you know, they're supposed to pay their wife and pay their alimony. Tell us which isn't dischargeable by bankruptcy, and how do you put them in bankruptcy without having the spouse fear that they're not going to get their money?
Well, the issue of credit cards, the bankruptcy code specifically says once you see a bankruptcy counselor, you can't use your credit cards anymore. And the U.S. Trustee's
Really?
office monitors that. So if you start charging credit cards, those would probably be not dischargeable. We also look back a year to see what the charges are, because there's some cases that say if you are using a credit card too close to the bankruptcy, too many times, then that could be non-dischargeable as well. So there are prohibitions against that type of activity. Alimony and child support are non-dischargeable. So the spouse, non-debtor spouse, for lack of a better term, will still receive the alimony or child support no matter what. Can't get rid of that. Property settlement is a little different. They changed the law a little while ago whereby property settlements in a Chapter 7 are not dischargeable. But in a Chapter 13, for some reason, they are. So I'll have cases come in where somebody has a huge property settlement. If I can put them in a Chapter 13, they'll pay out a percentage over a period of 3 to 5 years, and after that, the rest of it's gone.
Oh, that's what Chapter 13 is too.
It's a reorganization.
Yeah, but you have to gather all the creditors up, and then you agree, or the debtor agrees to pay so much
It's
percent?
based upon
Is
income
that
and
it?
expenses.
Okay.
So in other words, it's disposable income. It's whatever the disposable income is computed, that's what has to go to the unsecured creditors. And there's something called a means test, which is a combination of actual expenses and Internal Revenue Service expenses that we compile, and out comes a number. That number is what you have to pay the creditors.
Now, what happens if people, I think it came up earlier, if they really don't have an income, they may be unemployed?
Well, that would be a Chapter 7.
That would.
Yeah, which would mean that certain things are not dischargeable, like the property settlement. You know, income taxes that are within 3 years are not dischargeable. Payroll taxes are not dischargeable. Things of that nature.
The other point that I think is relevant here is if people go through a bankruptcy, then they're more able to pay their child support and alimony obligations, which are not dischargeable. And so that's an important consideration, too, because bankruptcy has sort of a negative overtone to people. But the fact of the matter is that the family of the person that goes through a bankruptcy might be better off in many ways because they'll get the support that they need to live.
Yeah, and also, we can, as I said before, we can create equity, because so many people wait till it's almost too late. So they're getting sued. There's attachments that go on the home. So now there's no equity because there's all sorts of attachments from credit card companies. In a bankruptcy, I can remove those attachments and create equity for the divorce court.
Oh, you're creating equity for the divorce court
For the individuals.
by removing the attachments.
That's correct.
And then they can divide that equity between the husband and the wife, or the husband and the husband, or the wife and the wife, whatever the case might be.
But mortgages, you can't. Mortgages are mortgages. Those aren't dischargeable.
Well, it
right?
depends upon the type. But like, if there's a Chapter 13 and the house is worth less than the first mortgage, I can remove that second mortgage. So that sometimes is a big help, because those can be anywhere from $20,000, I've seen them up to $120,000 for these equity loans that the banks just give out. So with the real estate going down in value, we have the opportunity in many cases to remove those. So then they take that second mortgage, it goes into the same pot as the credit cards.
Oh.
And they just receive a small percentage of payments over a period of 3 or 5 years, and that's it.
Is that fair, though, to somebody who gives a mortgage on real estate thinking it's secure?
Well, second mortgage business is very risky.
How
yeah.
long has that been going on? You know, where they can do that? Was that always that way?
That started in about 2005.
Oh, yeah, because I didn't think of so they're making it easier for people to go into bankruptcy. Or I guess the thing is to get rid of debt. With the whole, they think that's going to help the economy.
Well, sometimes they're making it easy, but other things they take away as well. So there's give and take. Let's put it that way. There's give and take.
Can you kind of summarize the types of debt that are dischargeable versus not? Because that would help determine whether it makes sense for somebody to go into bankruptcy,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, we analyze the debt, and it depends upon, like a lot of people are self-employed that go out of business. So now a typical person might come in, they owe payroll taxes, they owe income taxes, they have credit cards, and they have mortgages. That's a typical type situation. So we have to look and see what we can remove and what we can't. And what is the IRS doing to them? Are they garnishing their wages? Do we have to stop that at this particular point? So we analyze that to see what type of chapter they go into and what's beneficial for them. So your typical child support, alimony are not dischargeable. Your payroll taxes are not dischargeable. Your income taxes within 3 years are not dischargeable. So if they do have payroll taxes and IRS, we might want to throw them into a Chapter 13 and let them pay them out over a period of 5 years.
Mortgages, did you say they are or are not?
I can't discharge a mortgage.
Okay.
No. I can't take it off the house. I can discharge the personal liability. In
Yeah.
other words, if they wanted to let the house go and it goes to foreclosure, now they can't be sued because we discharge the personal liability but stays on the house.
But if they kept the house and 5 years later, the value went back up, that's second mortgage, which you got rid of in
That's to their
bankruptcy.
benefit.
Huh?
That's to their benefit,
Whose benefit?
the debtor.
Oh, the debtor, but
Yeah.
the second mortgage, that's it.
Second mortgage, that's it. Once the case gets approved, the case gets approved. So it's
Oh,
on the day we
that's-
file. You have to
it's
take a picture
changed, huh?
someplace. The picture is on the day we file. What's the picture? You know, what do we have? What's the value of the house? What are the mortgages? Can we remove the mortgages? That's
Do you
it.
ever, is in bankruptcy, are you ever able to get to the creditors and say, look, he doesn't want to go into bankruptcy, do you want to settle? We can do this for 10 cents on the dollar, you'll get something if he goes into bankruptcy by the time the trustee gets paid. Is that ever a possibility? Or?
I do that once in a while for people that really just don't want to file bankruptcy, plus they have means to do it. Because many of the credit card companies will settle, but they want cash.
Yeah.
So if you have a $20,000 credit card, you might be able to pay them $6,000 or $8,000, but you have to have the $6,000 or $8,000.
But you have to keep in mind, too, that there's a wife or a husband on the other end. Because the wives pay husbands now alimony, don't they?
Yes, yes.
And child support.
And child
And
support.
child support. That's interesting. So you have to, have you ever had a situation where you've said to an attorney that's referred to you, you know, I hate to tell you this, but this is what I'm going to have to do, and your client isn't going to be happy with it. Have you ever had that situation?
Yes, I have. For property settlements, especially. Yeah, very much
So you'll handle a property settlement, but you don't
Not,
do
no,
the
no,
property.
to eliminate the property
Oh, to
settlement in the
eliminate
Chapter
the property
13.
settlement.
Sure. In other words, they're bringing back the husband or the wife into a probate court for contempt for non-payment. And we'll file the bankruptcy and see what we can do.
The problem that arises when one spouse files for bankruptcy and the other doesn't, let's say you have a house where one of them wants to keep it, and then the other one, you know, files for bankruptcy, then you have all the debt goes over to one of the spouses, and you kind of have to work all of that out. And that's where someone like Norman, what he and I would do, particularly when I was litigating, we would sit down and try and come up with a way of doing it, because some people just wanted the house. I mean, they just loved the house. And, you know, and there are all kinds of problems if there's no equity in it, or it's underwater, as he's pointed out.
Yeah, that's they always say about divorce law, that's the one phase of the law that does not follow logic.
Well, it doesn't. It's a very discretionary. The judges have very broad discretion. But if you, with mediation, for example, you maintain control over your own destiny by solving your own problems within a framework that's within the law. But if you go to court, then you put all your cards on the table, and the judge might only have a few minutes to hear your case on a temporary order, for example, and they make these orders that are very far-reaching, and then then you lose control over your destiny.
I got a question for both of you. I was sitting saying, what question can I ask both of them that they both can answer from different points of view, or I might get the same answer out of you? What about the ones where the wife says, he's hiding it. I know he has this property and that property. Do you get an investigator, or what happens? He wants to go into bankruptcy, she doesn't. He's got all this money somewhere, and I don't know what they're talking about.
I once had a lawyer call me up and ask me that he had to file bankruptcy for his client. I said, why? Well, he says that the judge doesn't believe him, that he doesn't have money. He was a physician, and he was put in jail for payment of non-support. And I had to file the bankruptcy to prove to the judge that he really didn't have the income that he thought he had. And the judge let him out of jail after that. It was a sad case. It was a real. The guy was married 3 times and divorced 3 times. He had all sorts of child support that he couldn't afford because managed care, his income went down. And the judge remembered his first divorce where he was making X amount of dollars and wasn't doing that anymore.
His first divorce.
So I had to do that, sure. Because remember, it's a federal document. You're signing under the pains and penalties of perjury. So it's very, very serious. It's regulated by the Department of Justice, and if they find out that you lied, they will prosecute you criminally. So it's a very, very serious document that you're signing under the pains and penalties of perjury. So most judges believe, once they file bankruptcy, that they know what's going on.
Oh, that's good.
Another interesting point, especially with bankruptcy, is if someone has ingrained bad habits when it comes to spending, you might wipe the slate clean for now, but what happens 5 years from now? What does the slate look like then?
Well, it's nice to have repeat business.
Do you ever work with anybody who, after the changing times here, who after you file bankruptcy say, you really need a good
counselor,
money counselor, because that's something like you do. Like she also does that, like Money Matters, and we have somebody else who's been on the show, Money Watch. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Do you ever refer them to people like that? Look, if you keep spending the way you are, you're going to give me my repeat business.
Well, it's mostly the credit cards that cause that. So most people are relieved when the credit cards are gone, and they can get new credit cards again, but they usually don't get into those same habits. I really don't have that many repeat business.
Remember when the credit cards used to just show up in your mail every day? They don't show up as much anymore.
Well, it's interesting because one of the other topics that we have had is about students and credit card debt. Student loan debt.
Right.
Now, that's not dischargeable either, is it?
Student loans are not dischargeable, no.
No,
But
I mean, we have
kids
$50,000 in debt.
Yeah.
What did you say?
There's some new programs to help people with the credit card debt. The government has one, I forget the name of it, whereby they go upon your income and you make payments, and after 20 years, whatever's not paid goes away.
And don't they charge interest on the interest on these student loans that are supposed to be...
The interest is pretty high.
Yeah, they're supposed to be good for students. Meanwhile, if they just got a regular loan, it would be less money.
Sure.
I mean, they're really hitting the students up. I think they're better now because, like, we're doing a program. We're working on a program where we're going to go into the high schools and maybe even lower to teach financial literacy. And there's more and more throughout the country on financial responsibility, starting when they're in high school.
It's an excellent idea.
In fact, one of the things that prompted this was we've heard so many times from people who are in college, I wish they had taught me how to manage my money when I was in high school. So our main target is really college-bound students, so it might be juniors and seniors, setting the foundation for how do they even choose a school that's based on
doing that
what kind of a, what are the prospects if I take this field of study, and how much is it going to cost me to go to school, like a cost-benefit analysis based on the job market today, and how much loan do I want to incur.
When our kids went to college, they didn't have that. Now they really have people who were professional college seekers, not just the college, but can the person get a scholarship at that college? Is this where they want to go? I mean, it's a whole new thing. There were things out there. You've got to be kidding now, but there was one thing we've got to be kidding where somebody was paying kids not to go to college.
You've got to be kidding.
No, it was there. They were doing that not to go to college, that you can like learn on the job, learn this way and learn that. Yeah, vocational and professional vocational. Yeah. So you said you had a story for us.
You've got to be kidding.
Oh, do you have the kidding story? Yes.
Do you got it?
This fellow comes
good.
in, he was losing his house. He owed about $30,000. It's a true story.
Okay.
That's why it's hard to believe. He owed about $30,000 in back payments on his mortgage. He was out of work, but he was going back to work now. He wanted to save his house. I said, great, we'll do a Chapter 13, which will stop the foreclosure, and you can pay your back payments over a period of 5 years. He didn't have a car. I said, you don't have a car? No, it's repoed. I just borrow a car. So we go to court, and we're in front of a trustee who's reviewing this case, and the trustee sees on my paperwork there's no car. So she says to the fellow, do you have a car? He says, oh, yes. I said, what do you mean? You said you didn't have a car. Oh, no, I just bought a car. I said, where'd you get the money? Oh, my aunt lent me $30,000 to pay my mortgage, and I went out and bought a brand new Cadillac.
Instead of paying the mortgage? You've got to be kidding.
So I was turning all sorts of colors. The trustee couldn't believe it. And, he eventually lost his house.
Well, he told the truth.
He told the truth.
That's funny.
Well, really, on that note, I think we'll wrap it up. We'll call it a
Okay.
day. All right.
That's great. Gee, that went by so fast. Didn't it go by fast?
It did.
Yeah, it went by fast. But even I learned a lot, too. I didn't realize how the bankruptcy laws have changed to really.
And really, what surprised me is the stigma that used to be
Yeah.
attached to bankruptcy.
There's no more.
Because there are so many people now, a lot of times through no fault of their
That's
own,
good.
who
We-
get into that
It's
situation.
now a process.
Yeah,
Yes.
we thank Ann for
And Ann, it's
bringing
great to
you.
have you back
Yeah.
again. And
Yeah.
Norm, it was nice to hear from
Yeah.
you.
My
Maybe,
pleasure.
maybe we'll have you come
Yeah.
back,
Sure.
talk a little more
Thank you.
about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I encourage our viewers, if you or anyone you know is facing any of these unfortunate life changes, financial or in marriage, and you want to look for options, we ask you to get in touch with us, send us an email, and we'll
We're in
help-
22 towns. Look at our website.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we'll help you to at least find the resources, because that's what we're about, is helping people to find resources. So please let us hear from you, because remember, this is your show, the law, your money, and you.